source with Microsoft Azure. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Good. It's nice to have a moderator without voice. Try to guess what is it.
2 minutes.
Maybe
2 words.
Oh,
2 minutes.
We have like more questions for
Yeah.
us.
I think that, Benjamin, you removed your headsets, therefore your computer is selecting the wrong inputs. Can you maybe just refresh the page and try?
Have you tried Firefox? It may work.
Have you tried turning it off and on again? Can we restart the cloud?
I
think he's restarting it, right?
Looks like it.
Is he restarting?
Well, he turned off his camera, which I think is the wrong thing to do.
Yeah,
I don't know.
should switch on the audio.
Yeah, I don't know what he's doing.
Still.
Maybe you can learn memes, Benjamin, and then you can communicate over memes.
Just in sign language, I mean, that works.
I can ask the panel a question if you're up to it.
Go ahead.
So what do you think about the combination of open source and Kubernetes? Like deploying different, I'll focus it. Deploying stateful frameworks to Kubernetes.
Stateful applications.
Stateful applications. Yeah, I just said frameworks because I'm so used to Spark, Cassandra, and all those kind of stuff that are distributed.
Just use some operators and deploy them. I think there are quite a lot of examples.
I think the question is not about how to do it. It's about whether you should actually do it, whether it makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm. Whether it makes sense or we should kind of look into more services like SaaS, software as a service, that can give us the same abilities.
Well, that was probably the reason why in the first place it's not that common yet to basically run something like a database in Kubernetes, because all of the cloud providers have a pretty good support for a lot of database as a service. And other than that, when it comes to managing this, so how I see it, it's mostly a question how to manage a database in general. So just that you have to be aware of all of the like gotchas and caveats that you have to do when running a database in production otherwise, right? So it's not just kube control apply and there goes my Postgres, but basically what happens to all of this backups and what if that node crashes and all these things. So what's about having multiple instances and replication. So what an operator would do for you, but then you just have to do all of the processes and practices in place so that you're safe with backups and with all these things that you would otherwise do as well. So probably in detail it doesn't differ that much whether you would run it on-prem on your own, like a production database system.
I mean, stateful is not just database. Maybe database is the extreme example where you have critical data and you don't want to lose that, but you can for sure run things, I don't know, messaging, Kafka, as long as that's not your primary source of data, as long as it's derived some kind of materialized view. That's probably suitable.
If I agree, actually. It depends really what you're doing. If you say like Kafka, for example, you just do some streaming and you basically can lose all of these events if you want. But if you say messaging, then if you think of something like IBM MQ with the gold standard of like serializable transactions, then you don't want to lose that stuff, even if you have like in-flight transactions while your system is going down. So then you have to provide basically the same security, if you want, or stability, as if you would run a database system. So
I mean, it's the nature of the data. If you can afford to lose it, probably.
Yes, but that's for me, that is actually the difference. If we talk about stateful, then for me, it's always the question, can we afford to lose it? And usually the question is no, otherwise you don't care about stateful, because, then it just goes down, and if it comes back up again, it fills up the cache or whatever, you can lose the data. But that is pretty much the critical part. Otherwise it's easy, right? You just throw it away and restart.
Oh, danke. Okay, danke.
I'm of the same opinion. I think one of the discussions I've been having in the experience in my time working with customers around this specific topic is the question number one to answer for this is, are you introducing Kubernetes just to run stateful applications? Because if the answer is yes, then are you adding Kubernetes as a layer to run stateful applications? Because if you are doing that, then you are introducing another layer of complexity, which is not necessarily required or needed, right? Databases run pretty much very well on VMs. I think that the only time when I see value in doing stateful applications on Kubernetes, in my opinion, would be if you are aiming to unify how you deploy software. So you have a bunch of stateless applications and a bunch of stateful applications, and you want to run to be in the same place. Everything is YAML, everything is declarative. You don't want to have half of your automation done through Bash scripts and half of your automation done through CI/CD pipelines of Kubernetes, right? Then you want to just have the single platform that you deploy toward, which gives you portability and everything. But if you are going to just, I have a bunch of databases, let's just slap Kubernetes on my servers to run those databases, I don't really see value in doing that.
That's a very good point. Yeah, fully agree.
Oh. And the example of stateful applications that I've seen people running that can afford downtime would be things like Grafana and Prometheus monitoring. People do run Grafana and Prometheus on top of, Prometheus specifically on top of Kubernetes, because if you lose Prometheus, you lose a bunch of metrics. That's fine. It's okay.
Yeah.
What I wouldn't do is write a bunch of containers that write to the file system and just expect data to be there. that I wouldn't do.
Good.
Anybody else have an opinion?
Yeah, actually, I think everything is already said. So actually, it really depends on your requirements, what with respect to durability, transaction safety, and other things. So I can see that for smaller use cases, I think it's also perfectly valid to use stateful applications within Kubernetes. I don't think it should be totally forbidden, but actually, it really depends on the scope, on your requirements, whether they are so hard or whether you can say, okay, I have some redundancy directly within my Cassandra cluster, maybe. So you can run this with Kubernetes as well, but it depends, of course, also how are your disks organized, whether you're using directly on local disk or whether you are. So I wouldn't do this, for example, on persistent volumes. So it should be really go down directly on local stuff, so that it also has performance, not so much of performance impact. So yeah. But so in general, so my answer would be, you really should be very careful when it comes to stateful things in Kubernetes.
Another topic. What about manageability of basically production systems, and especially when it comes to Kubernetes versions, and then you have Istio installed and Istio versions, and managing different manifests, and how not to just throw away your cluster, create a new one, and redirect DNS basically to upgrade. So what's your take on that?
And my take on that is operators, to be honest. Actually, this is why operators has been invented for. So to provide a custom upgrade way. So especially for applications which need specific upgrade, has specific upgrade needs. So like schema changes or updates, something like that. If you take over stateful stuff, but also there are tons of other things where you need conversions and so on. And this is where operators shine. So actually, this is really something. And but it's really very hard. So actually, I was involved in some projects which are really dealing with this kind of upgrade question, and it's not an easy stuff. So it's really one of the hardest businesses over there to make upgrade very robust and fail-safe.
I think that the question is very interesting. One of the things I've been hearing in Kubernetes world since I came to this world was that, oh yeah, in Kubernetes you have a disconnect. You can manage the lifecycle of the different objects independently from each other, and the control plane is the control plane, the data plane is the data plane, so you can afford losing the control plane without impacting your application. In reality, that's not always the case. Mainly with Kubernetes, especially with Istio. I have had cases where upgrading the control plane of Istio impacts the app itself. So the app just stopped working. Your streams stop working. Your application cannot reach each other just because. I think that and the interesting part here is Istio is actually moving away from operators toward the Istio-CTL command line, and they're moving away from even microservices toward a single daemon, the Istio-D daemon in 1.5. So I would say one of the ways we implemented it for a couple of our customers is always the stage prod scenario. You have your stage environment, you do your testing in your stage, and then you kind of battle through the problems. And then before you do your prod, you know exactly what problems you might face. Another one is the multi-regional type deployment scenario where your application is actually in different regions. So you could like drain a region or remove a region or remove a cluster from your environment, do all the upgrades, and then put it back. That's some sort of global load balancing. Pretty much what you said, except that you have a load balancing layer in front of all your clusters. I wouldn't rely on a single cluster in a single region and just expect to have 100% availability. That's not a realistic thing to just aim for, essentially.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I found that also interesting what Istio did in the last versions, and especially this, I think it's called manifest thingy with the Istio control that you were, I think, referring to. I actually like that approach. So in the past, I was always installing Istio, actually not even the managed version, which is in the IBM Cloud IKS support, but just, Istio control and then Helm template actually back then without tiller, just to create YAMLs and then apply them. But now it's actually with the Istio control, and then I think it's apply manifest or something like that. And this is quite helpful, actually. You can then write your, what are they even called, manifest descriptors or something, and then basically create
you have this
version of Istio.
You have this concept of profiles, and each profile has a different set of settings, and you can create your own profiles and stuff like that. It's I was very curious. I haven't actually figured out why yet, but I was very curious why they moved away from an operator, because they used to have an operator. They used to have CRDs and operators, and you could just manage the whole mesh with an operator. But they deprecated that in favor of the Istio-CTL. I mean, an Istio-CTL is also good. You can just run it from a CI/CD pipeline with like a wrapper script, and then you're good to go. Are you back, Benjamin?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, it's just now 4 tabs. Maybe that's the key. It was not so many, just 20 that I had open. So yeah, finally. It's really nice that you picked up the discussion on your own. I like that initiative. Looks really good. So question is, how should we proceed? Because you had a nice flow. Do you want to proceed, or should I throw in some questions and we do turns and then see how the communication is flowing? Questions? Up, hands up. I cannot see anything. Thumbs up. Yes, no?
Yeah, sure. Sounds good.
Yeah, some questions.
Okay, so.
For me, it's still all black everything. Can't see him.
You cannot see me. Interesting too. Can you see the question?
I see the question, yeah. I see question 2.
Ah, cool.
3.
Yeah.
Okay,
3.
I made it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I see question 3.
So question number 3 is, what is the biggest challenge for the future of cloud in the next 3 years, in your opinion? So anybody's free to answer.
I'll go first. Have a
Awesome.
challenge. Maybe what's for me, I would say probably it's complexity, like looking at, let's say, the cloud native landscape, picture. It is growing exponentially. So the number of projects that can do same thing or similar things, and yeah, the overall technological complexity around it. And I don't think it is easy for, let's say, regular developers who are not developing in this space, but they want to use the platform. It's not so easy to consume all these projects easily. So creating abstractions on top of these technologies that are easy to consume are still not coming that fast. That's definitely one challenge, probably the main one for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think one of the things that I see a lot is the cloud space is definitely a newer technology in terms of where we are, but I think many people or engineers, developers are kind of still they haven't caught up yet in terms of skill set, and like you said, adding on the complexities of uh, multiple different cloud vendors and lots of different services even makes it even harder. So I know with us, we always have um, we always have a challenge of education and helping customers, even internally, helping people get caught up to speed as fast as possible. It's one thing to be able to build stuff, but like building it the right way with best practices and cost effectively is like the main challenge I see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was about to say the
same
same.
for me. The onboarding.
Go ahead, Adi.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, the onboarding part, definitely. There's a lot. Each cloud brings a lot of different services, ranging from IaaS to PaaS, which brings a lot of complexity in, first of all, deciding what the right architecture, what should the architecture be built out of. It's like a puzzle where you can actually switch different component or different services. And then what's the best way to for those services to, what is the best way to integrate all those services together and what works well with what? This is some of the questions that I often see. It's mostly around architecture and to pick the things that are right for the solution that they want to build.
Yeah, so I am of this. I agree with all what have been said. I think that from my perspective, one of the biggest challenges is actually not a technological challenge; it's more a regulation challenge. We're seeing more and more regulation being put into place. The Cloud Act in the US, a bunch of GDPR in Europe, and all of these things are just making it more complex for people to find the information and understand what those regulations mean, for the cloud providers to explain what those regulations mean and what the impact on customers are, and for technology-driven people like ourselves understanding actually what that means. Because regulations are written by lawyers, not by developers. So by definition, I could read the Cloud Act 6 times and I'll probably understand 5% of it, right? Yeah, so I think that's going to be one of the biggest challenges we're going to have to battle through in the next, and because like technology is a one thing, but when a customer is actually thinking about going cloud, there is like a 3 steps process in terms of picking which one do you want, and it always starts with, if I go with this cloud provider, am I going to be breaking any laws? The second thing, am I paying the best price? And the third thing is the technology good? It's never the other way around. We never start with technology and then drill down into regulations and costs, right? It's always a cost and low regulations driven decision first in most of the industries, and then it comes down to the technology.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree, especially with the latter part of technology and how you deal with it. So I wouldn't even think of the cloud and all the regulations as depends whom you're asking. But if I say the biggest challenge for the projects, I think I'll continue to see the challenges that we have right now as well. Like basically, how are you gonna build and ship and deploy your software? Do you have proper processes in place? Do you have automation? Do you have testing? Do you have CI/CD pipelines and the whole, fully fledged approach of, progressive delivery, if you want, and all these things in order to ship software properly? And then, having that said, again, it's not about cloud native or not. It's not a question whether you are actually on the cloud. It's more about the processes you put into place, and you can do that on-prem also. It's just a different computer that you run on. So actually, I would see these as the biggest challenges for projects in general, but that's not necessarily related to cloud native, probably.
I would like to add also the developer experience, that this will become also quite big challenge to make it very easy for developers, not only for the whole process and to deploy something, but also for developing stuff. So something like the Heroku experience there, that it's really easy to create stuff, that it's easy to test out stuff in order that this kind of inner loop goes very quickly. So at the moment, it's really quite a lot of steps until you really get back to your feedback for the code change you do. And I think this will be quite hard because the complexity increases, and you need to go back a step to make it faster. And so the experience you had previously when you just save a file and then you get an update on your browser, for example, this is hard with Kubernetes.
Oh yeah, it's complicated.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to add something, or is it like we all agree now on your summary? So should we take the next question?
I think we could probably look at the chat as well.
Yeah. Let me see. Oh yeah, there are some. Then let me change the slide for that one. Where's the audience questions? Okay. Let's see in the chat. Let's read the last question from Alexander Orlovsky. So I have a middle-sized client which uses a lot of VMware stuff, and they look into cloud stuff, but they are concerned about service level agreements and 0.999% of availability. Many times they ask me what is the best approach, how companies can benefit from cloud technologies in regards in transition. Interesting facts. For example, Oracle announced a partnership with Microsoft in building a mixed cloud application. Example given: enterprise cloud, interoperability, heterogeneous clouds, etc. So what should this poor engineer tell his clients? What's the real deal? How would you proceed?
So I would say there are multiple things in there. So probably it's meant like 99.999% availability. Otherwise, 1% availability would have a little bit low.
Sorry, sure.
No, it's written 0.9, but
yeah, he wrote it correctly.
Yeah, so SLA is one thing, but the question is always, what is your what is the alternative? I mean, if you build stuff now in-house and run on-premise, what is your actual availability? And I guess it's, at least that's just an assumption, but it might be less than what most clouds are offering, or factually offering you. And then transitioning, it's I don't really actually see a concrete question there. So, for example, if you say you build a lot of VMware stuff, and it might, like based on VMs, I guess. So it might be possible to just migrate them as an infrastructure as a service to VMs running in the cloud, for example, as a first place. But then also the question is like, why? So what is the motivation actually in the first place? So what is the situation that you're in right now? Are you using on-prem? Are you happy with that? Is it like a factor of manageability, like if you want to move faster, which is basically the biggest advantage of a cloud, that you can create new stuff very quickly. Is that the question? And then have a process how to bring your VMs, for example, to the cloud, which is perfectly valid. Or like, are you looking into things then? Okay, how can we transition there with some more modern technology, with something that is based on containers or whatever. So actually, I would say, what is the actual goal, and more important, what are the motivations? Why to do that? Not just to be buzzword compatible, but to say, okay, we actually have a few like challenges or motivations to do this. So this is what I actually would ask upfront first.
Okay. Makes
Yeah,
sense.
I think the question has roughly two parts of it. One is the availability piece that you just answered, Sebastian, and the other one is the interoperability piece, which basically how can I operate in it, like what the industry like to call it hybrid mode, where you have parts of your services are on cloud and parts are on premise. So back to I'm gonna put my consultant hat. For the availability piece, it's pretty easy. Just ask the customer, do you have a higher availability than whatever a cloud provider will give you? If the answer is no, then it's pretty straightforward. You can move to cloud. I don't think that anybody can achieve 100% availability. That's just a fact. And then the second thing would be to challenge the customer, challenge people on why do you need 99.99, right? Why is it critical? Because a lot of times people just put availability numbers on services without really understanding. Like if it's a ventilator that is keeping somebody alive, yes, 100% availability is required. If it's, I don't know, if it's a website where people buy chairs, it doesn't matter, right? They can buy chairs tomorrow. That's the point. The second part about the interoperability piece, that really depends on, again, consultant hat. It depends. It really depends on what piece of technology you're working with. I would say I like to always start with requirements. I do not like when people go into technology and solution mode. When you talk to customers, do not go into like, let's start architect, let's whiteboard, let's whatever. Requirements, what are you trying to achieve? What are your motivation? Where do you want to get 2 years from now, 3 years from now? And then drill down on a per service basis and then build on that. So.
And I like what you said.
I think we can.
So in the past, I actually always had a screenshot from, like a big company like Apple or whatever when the service was down. And today I took a new screenshot of GitHub when it was down. So, and it's like, do you think you're going to provide, a more stable service than GitHub? Then, even they have this problem. So, relax.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think a lot of people need to know need to differentiate it between lift and shift. That's a little bit like, okay, I have a bunch of VMs running on my private cloud or on-prem, and I want to have the same architecture on the cloud, which is the lift and shift approach into how we can leverage everything that the cloud gives us. And this is more of the cloud native approach, what services already exist that going to make my life as a developer or as a DevOps or as an IT or as an architect a lot easier and a lot better. So this is as well another question that, you should ask your customers.
Do we have a new question, Benjamin?
Next question. So let's see. So I think that my question completely aligns to what this one, to the one that was raised by Alexander. How and when should enterprises in the industry start their journey into the cloud? What do you think? You already talked about looking at the requirements. Is there something to add? So
yesterday.
Like engineering skills or?
I would add another question up front, why? I think that's more important to ask first before we look into how and when.
Yeah.
Okay. Why? Why?
I think the why is most.
Sorry, Adi?
I think the why is mostly around growth. Yeah, I think it's mostly around growth. For example, when you have your own prem, you need to deal with the machines and buying new machines, installing them, making sure everything works. If something fails, you need to fix that. And especially today, when there's, less people that can help you with putting together your machines in your data center at the moment, it's definitely easier to work with the public cloud, where you can ask for machines. And it's definitely gonna be faster than ordering half year in advance. So I think you should look into growth. What growth do you expect? Be positive about that. And this should answer the why.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I would
George?
add to that if your business is not IT, why would you want to do IT? If your business is to make burgers and sell them to customers, why do you want to run data centers?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
If you are McDonald's, why would you want to have people managing servers for you and virtualization? And it just doesn't make any sense.
Or you
Let
mean
the
run your own IT?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like
fully
like if you're making burgers, why do you want to run your own? If you have a pizzeria, do you want to have a server in your pizzeria with the POS, the point of sale system, or do you want to just buy an out of the box solution? Like you
It's
should be
gonna smell
spending
like
time
tomato.
making pizza, not sorry.
It's gonna smell like tomato after a while.
Yeah, it's going to smell like tomato for sure. But I think that
Yeah.
the why is like the motivation should be always driven by what are you trying to achieve as a business, right?
Yeah. So actually, I think also that it also depends whether it's a greenfield or a brownfield application. So whether you really can start afresh, then you have other factors. So you might tend to move earlier to the cloud when you can start afresh. Instead, if you have big migration costs, and when you have to ask yourself whether it's really worth, whether the benefits really pay off if you make this kind of efforts, or whether you can really sustainable maintain your application as they are now. So I think this is also kind of a factor whether.
Yeah, for me, I mean, for many large customers too, it's like their financial side is going to be able to shift away from CapEx, right, and move over to OpEx expenditures, which is actually good. But then, like everybody else said, like most companies are moving away from having to manage and protect data centers, right? Leave that to, the other cloud providers who are much better at that and can do that more cost effectively. And I think the largest thing for engineers is just being able to use services that and build services that sit on top of things that other people have proven out to work, right? Like, for example, there's no reason to rebuild an identity management platform. It's unlikely you'll ever be able to build one that's more secure than someone who's already built one and been battle tested. So yeah, we see a lot of customers talking to us about that, and I think it's a good place to start.
Yeah, one good point that you mentioned. So you specifically said cost effective, and I agree with that phrase. Like actually in the beginning, some businesses try to, move to the cloud in order to save costs, which probably is not true. You're not going to save, money just in terms of, cost that you pay for your infrastructure. But when you say cost effectiveness, if you, build in all the knowledge that you need, all the engineers working on it, and, acquiring knowledge in terms of how to run your own IT, then yes, definitely. So that's also something to put in, and of course, like what we talked about, like in terms of speed, like moving fast.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really difficult actually to utilize all of the hardware that you own. And I think,
Yeah.
I think most companies actually utilize less than 30% of their the physical hardware they own. So like in the cloud space, the main trajectory is most customers are paying for what they use, and that's important.
Yeah, I've been having a discussion / an argument with one of my customers a few weeks back about this specific topic of cost. And the discussion went like, I can run VMs cheaper than on cloud. And I
Sure.
was like, well,
Yeah.
define what is cheaper, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty
And
sure.
then it was something like, oh, I have my own whatever 10 servers. So using only open source virtualization stack and stuff like that. And I only have to buy the hardware. The hardware is not expensive, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, so what is your OpEx cost?
Exactly.
And he was like, yeah, data, power and electricity and internet. And I was like, what about people?
Yeah.
And I was
People.
like, no, that's another department that pays for it. I was like, here you go, right? It's not
Yeah.
because you are
Many
not paying
customers
salaries.
forget about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Uh,
management of those hard pieces of hardware is very expensive and it's time consuming.
and the technical debt related to that, especially if you're running on-premise open source, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I think that even if you're not going to gain much by moving to the cloud in terms of cost, you should still consider it, because at least you're going to gain something. Maybe it's not money, but maybe speed, maybe innovation, maybe something else. It's not always a materialized, easy to see or easy to measure gain, I would say. So.
Yeah. I can share some years ago, I worked for a company that dealt with huge amounts of data. And one of the challenges, and we worked on-prem, we have a few huge data centers. And one of the challenges we faced was building a framework for the data scientists and the researchers to actually get their work done, because they needed data, they needed access to petabytes of data and to run machine learning workloads. And back then it was a big challenge. And today, when we look at the public cloud, it's much easier. I mean, once you have your data stored somewhere, you just need a connector to one of the machine learning frameworks, and here you go. You have a machine learning frameworks. So it's a big advantage for that as well.
And then the other thing I think we didn't cover is in terms of security, although it's a pretty broad topic, but I do not believe that a company with 4, 5, 6, 10 security specialists will be able to get stuff more secure than a big company like Google or Amazon or IBM that has huge departments of people who just does only security. That's the only job. I do not believe in terms of security exposure it can be better than a cloud provider in general. It's like a very kind of vague topic, but it's just logical, right?
Yeah, that's actually an important part. I mean, I've seen many customers who like tried or who even said, like they are able to manage this, but then only when they literally also have their own departments that do nothing else than, like security or IT or whatever. But then of course the question is, what is the cost of that? And then, at some point you're building a second Amazon or IBM or, or trying to.
Okay. Nice. Should we go for one more question? There's also. So I think I would raise another one. What is your most favorite project related towards cloud projects, like talking about frameworks and tools that you discovered? Is there a handy weapon of choice that you think everybody should know or that you like to use a lot? And maybe also within the space of your most favorite company. Maybe not, so depends.
Are you asking favorite project? So like service or
For example,
feature?
I made it quite open, right? It could
Okay.
also be a cloud service.
Okay. I guess I think for developers, I think AWS Lambda is probably my favorite. I think it's super easy to work with. Supports, pretty much everything in the entire cloud ecosystem. There's no like type proprietary software that you have to bundle in. Everything is just programmed with standard 6 or 7 different programming languages that people already use. So, scales quickly and is really cost effective. I think for developers, also Visual Studio Code is like my favorite IDE. I think, it's amazing. It's amazing that it's free, but I think it's everywhere I go, I think most people are using VS Code these days now. So AWS has plugins for it. I'm sure Google does. I think it's lightweight. It's modular. So it's my IDE of choice. When working with pretty much anything.
Nice. Yeah, I would say for me, it's, well, many projects I could mention. Two things I want to say for lately, something that is not super related to cloud, but kind of is Quarkus for the enterprise Java framework, which really enables, a awesome user experience. And and also, like runtime experience, mostly thanks to a build time optimization and really cool techniques if you think about it. So that's pretty it's pretty mind-blowing what that just enables. And it runs really, really well in containers. And then as a second thing, actually, I would say it sounds very, very basic, but if I think about it, that's a huge enabler, Docker and containers in general. Because for me, a container is such a nice level or layer of abstraction where you say you can run, anything that can basically, run a Linux process, and then you can put it into a container and put it into Kubernetes or, whatever orchestration you want. So this abstraction layer of saying, you only know about you start a process, whatever that will be, and then you literally can put anything in, is just a very nice way to build and ship your applications and to abstract on that thing. And then of course with all the containers have been around for a long time, but basically what Docker provides, and that they just enabled developer to use it at such a scale, with the whole manageability, with push and pull, with infrastructure as code, as Docker files, we probably often forget what that enables to us.
Yeah, I agree with that container statement.
Yeah. For me, I'm also, there are a lot of projects I'm really excited about. So actually, of course, the most project what I'm excited about is that I'm working on, which is Knative, which I really think is an awesome thing. And it's not only by accident that I work for that, but I really deliberately also chosen that field because I'm really excited about this. But actually, beside that, I have also some more smaller projects, for example, like Customize for Kubernetes, which I also really love, which is it's an awesome thing, alternative to Helm charts and other things. So it's really more the small thing. So this is something I'm currently excited about. It's not, I would not say it's not my most favorite one. And the other thing is I all tried to run Kubernetes on a Raspberry Pi cluster, so going in the other direction, not really cloud, but really more like IoT things and more on the edge. And there I really was impressed by K3s, which is something from Ranger, which I really appreciate, that they achieved a really lightweight Kubernetes installation by stripping off parts, and really runs super stable on Raspberry Pis. So that's what I'm excited about.
You can talk to Oracle, and there, was it 1,000 Raspberry Pi cluster that they presented at CloudCon?
So
like that.
This is a good racing, Sebastian. I step in for a second. I think, Bilgin, how many minutes do we have left?
Yeah.
So Bilgin wanted to leave, so maybe let's just make a small cheer for his participation. Any final words? I'm so glad that you joined today.
Cool. Yeah. I can say the project I'm most interested right now as a final words, and I'm kind of lucky. I try to merge work and my excitement, and it's a project called Debezium. It lets you stream changes from databases, and with my consultant architect hat, I had lots of trouble with doing two-phase commits, etc. And kind of Debezium solved this problem by letting you stream changes from databases. And I think this kind of architectures combined with Kafka will be very interesting going forward. So something to really check out. And thanks everyone for inviting me to this panel and give me opportunity to present.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So, as Bilgin is now leaving, we finally could hook up one more person. So maybe I let Raphael first introduce himself a bit. So it's just what I know is a cloud developer advocate, and he's now tuned in from South America, right? So we are totally international today. And maybe just introduce yourself and then tell us what we should know about you, and then go ahead and answer maybe the question directly.
So hi everyone who are watching us, and also I know some people here, some of them in person, like Sebastian, Roland, and it's missing someone here. Well, my name is Rafael. I work in Oracle as a developer, cloud native development advocate in a Linux team. Basically, what I do is help people and companies to adopt technologies, cloud native technologies. And well, one of my favorite projects related to cloud native is Kubernetes itself. It seems like something common to say nowadays, but I really like to see how Kubernetes became like a whole platform, a complete platform to run cloud native applications. It's very natural to see everyone moving forward to run their containers inside Kubernetes. And what are the capabilities that Kubernetes allow to those applications? So for me, it's my favorite project related to cloud native in general.
So did everybody has turns on the question? I think we missed somebody still, right?
Go ahead, Adi.
No, I can.
Yeah, Adi, right?
Yeah.
And Abdel as well, probably.
So one of the projects which is open source that I really like is the virtual kubelet, because it allows you to spin different services directly from Kubernetes, which is really cool because you can integrate different clouds as well, different services from different clouds. Yeah, I personally really like it.
Yeah, so for me, hands down, Knative, it have been my favorite tool in the last 6 months. I think it's going to be tremendous going forward. I like how we are able to finally still write containers, run them on Kubernetes, but move away from the complexity of doing YAML engineering all day long. The second one is Scaffold. It's an open source tool that Google have open sourced. It allows you to basically, it's like think about it as Maven build for Kubernetes. It's a command line. You have a YAML file, simple YAML file, and then you run Scaffold, and it will monitor all the changes in the code in the folder. And as you are modifying the code, it will build your containers and push them automatically. They have introduced lately Scaffold init, which allows you to generate the Scaffold YAML file from Scaffold without having to write it yourself, which is cool. And the last thing I've discovered 2 months ago is Kind, Kubernetes in Docker. It's an open source project that allows you to spin up a single node Kubernetes cluster inside the Docker container. And you can have different versions of Kubernetes. The reason I like it is because I was using Minikube before, and I was using Minikube with the VirtualBox because I want to keep the things separated and I want to keep it tidy. But each node is like 2 CPU, 8 gigs of 8 gigs of RAM, and I get very quickly to like 10 versions, so 10 different running nodes. So Kind is pretty lightweight because you don't have the OS basically. You just have a Docker container, and inside the Docker container there is the entire Kubernetes control plane. So you can test like Kubernetes 1.18 in like 5 minutes versus 20 minutes in Minikube.
That's actually a good point for a follow-up question, like to make the round. What is your favorite way to run and test Kubernetes locally? You know, like the Minikube version of saying you have a Kubernetes cluster locally. Because I was quite happy. I used it in a workshop last year. Oh God, what was it? It was not K3S. It was, I have to look it up. So I'll answer this in a second. But basically, it's Abdel, that's what you're referring to, right? For local development to have like a Kubernetes setup.
So the one I'm referring to is called Kind. K-I-N-D, Kubernetes in Docker. I'm not sure if you're talking about the same thing, but it's basically
local development where you have a local cluster and then you just control deploy stuff to. Yeah, me too.
Correct. Basically, you don't have a cluster. You have a single node. You have a single node cluster essentially, right? Each container is a single node. So if you do a kubectl get node, you get one node. You see just one node. So and then you can have multiple versions of Kind on your. So they have this thing called profiles, so you can create multiple profiles and you name them whatever you want. It's a really cool project.
Yeah. So what I was using was Micro K8S.
Oh, Micro K8S, yeah, I know that one.
Yeah. At a workshop last year, that worked actually pretty well. I think it just does local Docker containers for the nodes or something similar, but that runs directly on your host if you have Linux. So it does not do the Minikube thing with a VM, which made things easier from my perspective. Any others like favorites tools to run Kubernetes locally?
Yeah, Kubernetes integrated into Docker. It's also quite stable. So Docker for desktop also comes with a Kubernetes installation, and this works also quite easily. And then K3S, but it's more like a stripped down Kubernetes. So
yeah, so I have to share this with you, Roland. So I've been trying to build a Raspberry Pi cluster, but the problem with Raspberry Pis is that not all applications are built for ARM.
Yeah.
So I managed to scavenge some Chrome boxes.
Yeah.
So these are these like little Asus boxes that run Chromebox, but you can put Linux on them, and they're Intel x86. So I'm building a Kubernetes cluster on this.
Also,
it's like a work in progress.
Yeah, for this ARM problematic, I have a good tip, because you can easily cross-build on your desktop with Docker build kit, which is quite awesome, because then you can easily, it's just two comments, and you have your ARM images pushed to Docker Hub, and then also with the manifest, everything already set up for you that you can directly pull it from a Raspberry Pi. So you don't have to write your own manifest, and it's also a very, very smooth experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're on mute again? No.
I cannot hear you, Ben, again.
This the question, okay.
All right, maybe I'll take over because you are pointing toward the presentation, but as I see it, you are pointing toward towards somebody. You are pointing towards Sebastian. They're not aligned the same way.
Yeah.
Anyway, question 7. What was your most interesting cloud infrastructure project so far? What was it about, tech stack and business-wise?
Cloud infrastructure project.
Yeah, I would assume
work on cloud infrastructure.
I would assume you moved something to Google Cloud. You built something on Google Cloud, right? Or I'm sorry, on Cloud. I can go. My favorite was building. I don't know if you know the Google Doodle, the little thingy that you have in the search page. So last Halloween we had this game, which was the Google Doodle game, which basically it's a multiplayer game, and you have like a little ghost. So you click on it, and then you have a little ghost, and then you use your arrows and your keys to just. It's like Tetris basically, but with a ghost. So that was running on Google Cloud, and I helped the team architect that. So that was 2 million QPS at peak. Kubernetes behind the scene, so several GK clusters basically in different regions, and then behind a single global load balancer with a single VIP, so a single virtual IP. So the front end, which is the search page, calls the Kubernetes clusters, and the Kubernetes clusters is running the matchmaking process. So essentially, for example, if I would log in, I will have to wait until four users are online so we can play together. So Adi would log in, and then she would be connected through the front end, through the load balancer, to the cluster which is closest to her. And that cluster is actually dumping into a pub sub, which is a global queue. And so once 4 users join the same pub sub queue, then they will be offloaded by another microservice. And then they will be, so we will just basically send the IPs of each other to each other, and you play. It's peer-to-peer play. So the play is peer-to-peer. There is no centralized server, but the matchmaking was running on Kubernetes. So that was pretty cool. And it was using this open source matchmaking application that we have open source with Unity, the 3D game engine company. So that was really cool. Anybody else?
Well, it seems a little bit conservative to me, but or at least for some. But for me, I like all the Kubernetes self-managed clusters that each cloud provider provides, because as I said earlier, one of my favorite projects is Kubernetes. I like to have Kubernetes as a platform for my applications. So having a self-managed cluster where I can just deploy my applications. It's really nice, and it's also make it sometimes portable between some cloud providers. Just having a standard Kubernetes cluster where I can move my application from one cloud to another.
Cool.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the whole time, like what to say. Also, being having been in a lot of consultant projects, a lot of them are NDA. But one, it was actually a very small project, but one I really enjoyed because it showed the power of like standard or de facto standard technologies, was when I was moving my own like domain, my Sebastian Dashner domain with, you know, like websites and a bunch of applications from one cloud to another. Basically, it runs on Kubernetes as well, and Istio. And it was extremely straightforward. I was actually surprised. I expected many more issues, but it was basically, you know, create a new cluster in a different cloud, kube control, apply to all the YAMLs, and there you go. And it was running. So I found that, you know, it wasn't super interesting. Actually, it was very boring ultimately, but I found it very interesting that this is possible. And it showed somewhat, you know, like the power of basically building upon standards. And I think that's pretty cool.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I only can reiterate on my Raspberry Pi cluster. Sorry for that, but this was really the one which I found the most interesting. And yeah, I was really surprised because I started with Kubernetes already in 2014, 15, and it was really was an interesting experience because everything was really breaking all the time, and it was really so amazing how robust it really became over the years. So and even it scales into the small and into the large. So even also, I'm pretty sure I could migrate my project. So I set up a whole logging Prometheus kind of infrastructure. All my IoT stuff is just running on Kubernetes. I have 60 pods running at the same time with custom application there, and it never let me down. So I was really amazed about the maturity of all these projects, what happened over the years, and really looking forward what's still to come.
That's actually a very good point. We'll follow up on that. Go ahead, Adi.
Yeah. Well, there's not a lot I can say, but I was working on an autonomous car project where we injected data, we can call it edge, from the edge to the cloud, and we used kind of a pub-sub mechanism with event hubs and Azure Databricks for processing and analyzing the data. And Azure Databricks gives us a managed cluster, which was super easy to use because after years of working with Spark without any managed services, I have to say it's really great and it's really easy. Yeah, because it's definitely a fun project. It's still going on, but definitely a fun project.
Cool. I think we're just George.
Yeah, so this isn't something I actually worked on, but I think it's one of the most interesting things in the cloud space, which is I don't know if you guys have heard, but it's a technology called Firecracker. So AWS open sourced it maybe I want to say a year and a half ago, late 2018, and essentially it's a new virtualization technology, makes use of Linux KVMs, and really just it's like micro VMs, right? And they spin up amazingly fast. They have isolation between customers. It really allows anybody who's running Firecracker to spin up containers like super fast, utilize your hardware, make it really like safe security wise. And behind the scenes, it powers Lambda, it powers our container service as well. So it's really taken us a step forward in terms of VMs on VMs, I guess, but pretty cool stuff.
I remember very well when the Firecracker announcement was made. It was when we were in Morocco for Devox Morocco 2018. And I remember we have been in a place, in a coffee place, who was discussing it with somebody from Oracle. I don't remember his name.
Yeah.
But I remember very well when the announcement came out.
Yeah, it's Yeah, it's fully open source. It's anybody can look at it, deploy it, improve it, but it's definitely in use all over the place over here.
Cool. So I just want to go back to the point that Roland brought up was like 2014 deploying Kubernetes, it was broken. We're in 2019, so 2020, sorry, 6 years later. This is not your open source experience, right? For those of you who have been using Linux have always failed us miserably, big times, all the time. And it's open source, right? So the interesting part I'm seeing now with all this cloud space open source technology is that it gets better very, very quickly.
Yeah.
It's not like it's not like your GNOME version 5 20 years later, and you still cannot run it on certain laptops because of drivers not compatible, whatever. So I think that there is something to do with the fact that most of these projects have companies behind them, companies paying people to just develop it. So it's not your typical open source people doing it in their basement on their spare time anymore. All right, Ben, can you? No, you still cannot hear you. Nothing.
No. So I have to say goodbye. I have to leave in 3 minutes for now. I would like to thank you, everyone. It was a great experience. And yeah, hopefully we meet us there again soon.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Ryan.
Thank you, Ronald.
Yeah, I got to drop off as well. Nice to meet everybody. Thank you for having
Thank
me.
you, George. Thank you.
See ya.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Benjamin, do you still have something else?
It's a funny moderator who cannot say anything. Just write on your slides.
Yeah.
Or, do you think software engineers in the future still need powerful laptops, or can we shift our dev environment?
Wow.
That's a nice question.
It's a profound
I have
question.
an opinion on that. Who wants to go first?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Sam.
It depends.
Yeah,
I
please.
guess with current times, it depends on the internet connection. Sorry, I just personally suffered from that throughout the day. It's like everyone is connected, everyone is streaming something, so it impacts.
Well, and in my case, I would say that given that each year I need more and more RAM memory to run more and more containers or more and more services locally, I definitely would say that yes, probably we will need more, powerful laptops, even more.
And this fact sometimes actually just makes me angry, to be honest. Like, if you think of Slack and, Google Chrome and whatever, there's so many RAM intensive applications that basically do nothing, right? Like, 20 years ago, you could also use a whatever browser, but it's just crazy, especially Slack. That's just, it's insane that people even use it for, a stupid chat application. And yeah, but that's another thing on tooling. When it comes to IDEs and like the development experience, I would say yes, mostly because of connection. Even if you have a super fast connection, it's just like a less of an experience to say, okay, you have a cloud editor, for example, just because of the latency, and you will notice it. And also with all these cloud IDEs or like in browser IDEs, I'm personally not really convinced of them yet, at least. I mean, I love IntelliJ and to do Java, and that's just my go-to environment. Plus, local setup with Docker containers and things that we see with like Quarkus development modes. That's just a nice example that you can get a really, really good experience by doing most of your work locally. And actually I think even a lot of that work goes more into the direction. So it's actually the other way around, that you can say, now we have machines that are so powerful that I can run a subset of my cluster even, or of my cloud, on my laptop with Kubernetes, and then test all of that integration locally, which is actually a huge benefit if you think about it, because you get way faster turnaround. You don't have to wait for that cloud deployment to say, okay, now I want to test the integration into my other backends, because I have all of the backends as containers locally because my laptop is powerful enough, for example. So I don't really see that. I think there's actually a huge benefit and a huge advantage of leveraging all the possibilities that you have with cloud technology, especially if you run them locally.
Yeah, and so just one thing to add to the internet connectivity piece. The problem with internet connectivity is not the bandwidth and latency. The problem,
you don't have that problem. Sorry.
Yeah, the problem is not latency and bandwidth. The problem is reliability, right? If you rely on your home internet to be available all the time, that's just a false assumption, right? Simply because you are buying cheap internet, or in some countries it's expensive, but you are buying internet with no high SLA, and the ISPs are on purpose providing you with the service that doesn't have high availability, and that's how it is, right? So until we get to a point where I can get an internet connectivity at home that has the same SLA as a data center, then I don't think I will be able to trust the internet to do actually my work. I had a little joke about that whole Slack and Chrome. I think very soon we will be able to. We will be in a spot where we will have to run a home server just to run Slack and Chrome with RDP. That's the direction in which we are going.
I think there's also cost that people should think about as well, because deploying those environments on the cloud specifically for dev can be a little bit expensive for small companies or medium-sized companies, rather than investing in a good machine for the developers and DevOps and Ops.
There are a couple of questions from the chat. 16 gig and 4 cores is the minimum for enterprise development. I would argue that it depends on which environments. What kind of programming language and what kind of tooling do you use? I use a 6-core 32 gig laptop, and sometimes it's not enough actually. I know that people who do Java development need probably even more than that.
Well, just close Slack and you'll be fine.
Just close Slack. That's a very good one. Starlink network is big, and they think that it's future. Is that the SpaceX thing? Yeah. I think that's, it's one of these utopian worlds that we're going to get into 15 years from now. Don't forget that Elon Musk have promised to fix the world problems with Tesla. Where are we right now? So I wouldn't trust his roadmaps. The technology is promising, the roadmap is probably not that much.
That's probably the topic for a different panel.
Yeah.
All right. Benjamin, say something or write something into your slides.
Or in the chat. That also works.
How do you tackle working remotely? What is most challenging? Do you learn new tools? Cloud tech services support you in remote work? Which ones? A good internet connection.
As an example.
I think all of us are used to work remotely, right? Or not? Who wants to start?
I can share a little bit what we do in the team. So since we are a distributed team, we have kind of water cooler channels for people to discuss and socialize, as well as water cooler meetings. We ask people if they can to join with videos, because it makes a lot of difference in the conversation. Of course, working with different tools to track tickets. That's always important. And one thing I noticed from a team that just started doing remote work is that they have all hands in the morning, basically talking about everything that they're going to do during the day, and then another all hands at around 4:30 p.m. to kind of disclose and share what they finished and what is not done yet. So it's basically a lot of adding more, I guess, like monitoring process or agile process to make sure everyone is on board.
Well, and for me, the hardest part of remote working is stop working. Because because we are always at home, we always have something to do or something new to learn. Well, you just join one activity with another. When you stop your activity, then you start learning something. At least in my case, and then when you pay attention, it's the end of the day, and instead of going to bed, you just do something else. And stopping working is the hardest part for me.
Yeah, it's the fact that the work day and then the life day just blend into each other and it becomes one single thing.
Definitely.
Yeah. The same thing for me. That's like the biggest challenge, I would say. I have made the decision to just. I think one of the key tooling I figured out in the last couple of weeks is like having good setup. So a good desk, good screen, good camera, good microphone will allow you to have like to when you participate in the meeting, you're like it's a much more immersive experience. So I invested a little bit in. I have a standing desk. I have a microphone, proper microphone. I have a proper camera. And I'm working on the lighting. So that's crucial. And then with my team, we do like every other day, kind of a virtual coffee, 15 minutes thing. We jump onto a call. We just talk about all sorts of random stuff, just to keep like a sense of team. And we're doing a virtual on-site, off-site type thing in the next couple of weeks, where we would have like a half a day kind of talk about ongoing projects and stuff like that, but that would be with the much global team. So yeah, that's. And cloud, of course, helped. Like yeah, I run everything in the browser. All our collaboration tools with G Suite are in the browser, so except Slack, unfortunately.
Yeah, good, really good points. I can actually share a link I was put together at the beginning of this pandemic. Just my takeaways and some tips from working from home, because I was basically working remotely for the last years, which by the way is very different than this situation. So I would just like treat this situation differently, because it's totally exceptional, especially if you're used to working from home. It still feels totally different when it comes to like stress level and whatever. And I don't know what's probably the most important takeaways is it's just like like maybe reflect on what you need during the day, to see, even like plan your day a little bit, or reflect it at the end of the day. Okay, what should I do tomorrow? Not just to slack around and then spending the whole day like Raphael said, and you don't even notice that it's now evening and you did like whatever. But having actually more structure, not because you're forced to it, but because actually you have more freedom to choose when you do what. And then sometimes it helps to actually set up some artificial structures just for yourself, that you say, okay, I will get up at that time, I will get dressed and take a shower, and I will stop working, more importantly, at this specific time. Otherwise it just gets crazy after a while, and one day blends into the other. And maybe that helps. Play some music on Sunday. Yes, I agree. That's also very good.
Yeah, do something that is not computer related. Do something that does not require you to be in front of the computer. I like cooking. I spend quite a lot of time cooking lately. I'm cooking more actually than before. But as I can see, Benjamin is still in his same T-shirt he used to meet me yesterday at 8 p.m. So I'd assume he just spent 24 hours in the office.
Okay, for office room. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Wow, that's why I reloaded the process. So
sports. Oh yeah, that's another. In general, I like breaks that also challenge the other half of your brain, where you have to do some creative work. Even if you're not good at it, doesn't matter actually. Just play some music or a draw or something, or like cooking. I enjoy that as well. Learn a language, a non-programming language. I mean, and things like that. So actually,
I heard workouts are also a great thing.
To add to the tools, Visual Studio Code has a plugin for remote collaboration, where you can do an online code review or share your code with your colleagues during a call, where they can actually look into different libraries and different files of your code and give you comments. And you can use a chat, you can use a video call for that. and all this great features. And you can decide if you want to give them the ability to write on your code or only to view it, which is a great feature because we don't really get to go to the office now. Yeah.
Okay. So Abdel, this was a bit mean. So yeah, my work balance is like sleep, work, sleep.
I told you are in the office since yesterday.
Yeah, but I also try to cook like on the weekend, not more than usual. So I like that. Okay. So as I'm the moderator, I will not answer the question more in detail. But I learned a lot of new tools. So I was also inspecting a lot of tools like how to set up this thing here. And I made a Google Docs. I can share the link publicly if you are interested. It's like 30 tools or something for going more interactive, like not just having sessions where a speaker is presenting, but also like such nice panels. Okay.
One thing also,
we have 20 minutes. Okay, yeah.
I don't know what you think, guys, but one thing I'm doing more now is doing more of these online meetups and online kind of talks, since we cannot go to conferences anymore. And it's actually working pretty well, except the glitches we had today, but it's most of the time works very well. I like it because they have the flexibility. You don't have to physically move to another city to be there for like 3 days to talk for 45 minutes. So you could basically shuffle your day. You can just do a talk at 12 p.m. It doesn't matter. I find that very cool.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything to add from Sam? Or should we shift to the, I think maybe the last question, or maybe one more after that, but depends. Let's see. Shift. Yep. Awesome. So question 10 totally hits into that spot because now we have freed up a bit of our calendar, if we could, depends. Others, we tackle our daily challenges now a bit differently than before, probably. But tell us more about what was or is your latest pet project, or is there a new project coming on that you now plan to tackle on the side for this year or maybe for next year? Or is it just like some examples? I mean, it doesn't need to be a coding project. That's what I wanted to say with the examples, but it could be anything.
Yeah, actually a lot, especially now since I have more time. So I actually did start a podcast just recently. I think I announced it last week on how to be more effective as a software developer, where I already published some episodes. Webinars, yes. So like Abdel said, now you do some different type of outreach. So I was also playing around with just like different formats as well. I think that's kind of interesting how to make like interaction. So I was starting some live Q&A sessions where I say, okay, this session is interaction only. If you want to learn something, then you consume it on YouTube first and just like watch some video courses or some videos on that. And then in the session, it's only questions or like other opinions or feedback that you have. So that was quite well so far. So you can use some tools like live polls and Q&As where people can just chat in some questions and things like that. So that's quite kind of interesting. Other pet projects, learning a new, well, that's all tech, learning new programming languages and some new stacks just for fun. Basically I looked into like graph databases, even some JavaScript stuff, some front end, just some different things to widen your horizon, especially that you have, given that you have more time for it.
So yeah, Adi, try again.
Jumping on what Sebastian just mentioned, there's a lot of companies who gives the ability to test for a certificate for different technologies. So I think this is going to be my pet project. I know a lot of them will do webinars and then give away a free voucher to take their exam to check your knowledge. So kind of like a certificate hunts, if you may. I can give you an example. Yesterday, DataStax did a webinar. It was 3 or 4 hours webinar. In the end, they gave everyone a certificate to take an exam to be certified for working with Cassandra, either as an ops or as a dev.
Any more people that want to add something to the question? Like, Raphael, do you also?
Well, yeah, let me get that as well,
Sure.
because something that I like to do as my pet project, or by that I mean in my free time, is always learning something new. And that could be a new language that, besides Java, I'm also trying to go deeper in Node. I'm already a Node developer, so I'm just trying to get new frameworks or new things that are being released in the Node.js space, and Golang, for example. And using those languages, I always try to create a sample project where I can try cloud native technologies. Like, for example, where I can try a new version of Istio, a new version of Kubernetes and its features, a new version of ELK stack. That's what I like to do, to try to see how these new languages behave under a new version of a cloud native environment. Yeah. And by the way, they should act the same way. That's what I expect.
Yeah, so for me, I'm working on finalizing my Kubernetes cluster on Chrome boxes and reading some few books. I have a stash of books that I didn't have time to get into, like the Kubernetes Patterns book. I have a Istio Up and Running book. And the next one is going to be Kubernetes Up and Running. So these are 2 books that I have on the line. And then I did one. So I have decided to do some YouTube streams. I managed to do one, and then I got pulled into doing online meetups during the weekend, so I didn't have time to do another one. So I did one about Google Cloud Run and Knative 3 weeks ago. It's on my YouTube channel, and that was basically taking some open source applications that I found on the internet and try to adapt them to make them run on Google Cloud Run, just like proof that Knative is just containers, so you can just run whatever as long as it's a Docker container. And then we explored a little bit some capabilities related to service discovery and stuff like that. So that's going to be now I have a list of all the future live streams I want to do. So that's my kind of current big pet projects.
Another thing I just want to quickly comment, because we got in a chat from Alexander, some science to
Sure.
Some projects that basically help science, like fighting climate change or now COVID-19. And I want to share one thing that I find is really cool. Call for Code. It's mainly organized by IBM, which actually is now a project that is also open for submissions where you fight this pandemic. Like with software, so developers can unite and basically just submit any projects that help making this situation better, which I think is pretty cool that they're doing that. So posted the link for Call for Code.
Yeah, and the project that Alexander is referring to is this one, Folding at Home. It's a project where you can actually donate some compute cycles from your idle server to do it's basically distributed HPC. And they are working on COVID-19 research. So one of the main researchers is actually based here in Sweden, out of Malmo, and we're already in discussion with him. I'm already helping with some stuff, but if you have some spare compute cycles, that's a good project to actually give. It's a really simple. So you download the client, you put it on a computer, you run it with a few flags, and that's it. And then you forget about it.
Does it run in Kubernetes?
No.
You have a lot of resources available.
Unfortunately not. We are working on it. So the thing is that their application is a monolith app. They have something called the manager, which is like the sort of the master for the, and then you join your resources as a pool into the manager. But that manager is like a single .NET application. I mean, it's developed by scientists, so they're not necessarily developers. They haven't used all the best practices in terms of writing cloud native applications. But we are seeing how can we. I think refactoring is not the most important thing now. It's like getting it to work and scaling it up is the most important thing. So, but definitely looking into making it more cloud native for sure.
Okay. So I have two more questions, and I think they fit in quite nicely because you're getting tired. I have the feeling, and you're getting ready for maybe a beer. Let's see, or just cheering up with some glass of water, of course, as we are getting more and more healthy now. So question 11 is, what is, from your perspective, the top 3 things a modern cloud developer should pick up right now in skills, tools, or anything when suddenly 30 days of his time are freed up? You can also make it 60, depends. But
then I would say one is the cloud native technology that you're gonna use, or will use in the future, like mainly Docker and Kubernetes. If you're not already familiar with it, at least have a look into the concepts. I think they're very well explained on the Kubernetes page, for example. What is a pod, and what does it mean? Services and all these things. So I think that is very much needed, and that's just the best use of the time to say, okay, even if you don't use it already, then you might will, and to have that. If you're already advanced to that, and you might want to have a look into Istio maybe, or Knative, or things like that, just to build on top of it. The second thing I want to mention, look into proper ways how to do CI/CD. To do delivery, and not just continuous delivery, but like progressive delivery. Look into canaries, and all these proper ways how to ship software. And there are really great books out there, like for example the continuous delivery book, or Release It. And there's also a book from a more business perspective, Accelerate. So all these things, why a continuous delivery culture will really move you forward. And the third thing, that's close to my heart, testing, and especially proper automated end-to-end testing, that you can really run a test suite where whether your application will work as expected later on, and only that enables you to ship and move fast, to basically move to a fully fledged CI/CD approach in the first place. So maybe these 3 things is what I would mention.
Yeah, nice.
Okay.
Yeah, nice thing, Sebastian. Because I would also mention Kubernetes and container-related technologies as the number 1. And on top of that, I would add as a second and third things. For example, on top of Kubernetes, I would add a service mesh implementation like Istio, and also a serverless implementation, any one of them. But I like your response related to CI/CD, just because it asked about 3, and that would be my 3 favorite skills and tools and technologies.
I would just add one more thing to Sebastian, and it's for me like go into basics, learn Linux. Spend some time learning Linux. If you go into the container space and cloud native space, you need to understand how Linux works. That's it. So then I think about it in terms of layers. Linux first, Docker, Kubernetes second, service mesh third, and then whatever frameworks you want to learn on top of that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a nice way to see as a layer.
Yeah.
So, okay, Ari, what do you think?
Yeah, if I can add to that, I'll say each cloud ships with their own SDK for different services. So understanding that and how they build, as well as the security part. of the cloud. Like if you need to work with Key Vault to store secrets, what is a secret? All these kind of things are very, very much important when developing different apps for the cloud. And I think there's not enough emphasis on those, and people running straight away to develop the apps and store secrets in plain code. Yeah, which is in plain text, sorry, which is a big issue in terms of security. So definitely understand security, how it works with the cloud, what you need to know, the different networking in the cloud itself. Some cloud refers to it as a VNet, because now you have a virtual network. What does that mean? How do you connect the different services to work on the virtual network? How the services communicate as well. Yeah, basics.
Okay, so it's all about technology, kind of. Or is there something else? Just challenging you and your answers.
I have heard a lot of people complaining in my company about the fact that when we implemented the work from home policy, people are complaining about having to cook at home. I understand it's a challenge for a lot of people. I would say one thing you could do to try to fix that is learn how to batch cook. If you don't want to cook every day, learn how to cook a chunk of food on the weekend that can last you for an entire week. That's an interesting, useful skill to have. How to shop, how to buy the food, how to cook it, how to make it interesting, and how not to waste food. Certainly, that's the most important thing.
Okay, so final question. Oh, 1 second. I have it. It aligns to the last one. What is your most favorite, efficient, or anything fun way to tackle new things, to learn, to improve yourself? How do you deal this in a pace keeping way, for example, so that you stay energetic or whatever, or still are excited and not struggling when learning a huge load and then stop learning and learn again? Okay.
That's a really good question. What is the most favorite way? So now I can definitely say for sure I love learning in general. Like whatever it is, I love picking up new skills and like just to be better at whatever and then the day before. So I think whatever it is, it's just an awesome feeling to to experience, to say whether it's learning the piano or whatever, or cooking skills, and then hey, today I can cook this, yesterday I couldn't, so this is something I learned new. And the same is of course true for technology or languages. So I would say I love learning in general, and I especially love looking into new tech, and then for example building some applications like an example app or whatever, just some more than hello world, but like some experience that you enjoy writing, and then it's a really nice way of learning. So I would say learning in general, actually. What I try to do is to have some balance, to say, okay, if you're always in enterprise app backend stuff, then why not to do some front end things, or like something totally different than what you're used to, just also to give your brain some balance. In the same way, like when I said, if you're always developing, then why not do cooking or learning an instrument or whatever, just to have a different type of input and different type of experience, to make it more interesting. But other than that, I would say I love learning in general, whatever it is.
I would go back to something that Sebastian said earlier, is trying to learn a challenging skill, which inhibits the use of the other half of your brain that you don't usually actively use. So would be cooking, or like playing music, or anything, buying a kit, a Lego kit and mounting it or something like that. The second thing is I'm getting I'm enjoying learning by audiobooks or just listening to audio. There are a lot of topics that you don't actually need to look into a video to learn. Not necessarily tech stuff, but like general kind of science related things. So these are things that you can just put a pair of headphones with your lap phone when you are cooking, and then just listen to an audiobook or listen to a video on YouTube or something like that in the background, and you would learn one thing or two.
So
Yeah. And
So
in my
for
case,
everybody else, yeah.
sorry, go on.
Yeah, just I wanted to announce that you maybe what's about it for you.
Okay.
Raphael.
Well, my favorite way to learn something, it's always by doing. If I just learn the theory and not practice, probably I will just forget it in a matter of days. And when I try, it becomes like it seems like the knowledge goes to a persistent storage. So my favorite way to learn is by practicing and trying and making mistakes and learning with those mistakes and then keep going.
Yeah, I agree. I think it also depends on whether your goals is to learn something that you like doing or you're interested in, which is also a big question. I mean, if it's your passion, then it's going to be more easy to find the motivation to do that. But again, I think people should be more easy on themselves. It's a unique situation that we're at, so do what you can. If it works for you, go for it. If don't, it's okay to relax and do nothing. Basically, it's also good. I actually found for myself, I really enjoy learning new things, and the more complex it is, the more motivation I find in myself. I don't know why, but this is me. So what I do, I put together a structure for the weekend or for after hours, the kind of things I want to deep dive into it, and it's kind of and during out the day, kind of fills me with motivation to after hours, because I know I'm gonna deep dive into it and learn it. And I do that. When I do that, I close all distractions, so no phone. If I can go without internet, so no internet. All this kind of stuff, which really helps to focus. Yeah.
Yep, makes sense. Okay. So when we look at the time, yeah, Alexander adds like program is like martial arts without process. You don't learn,
Nice.
you just try and try and try again. I like that analogy. And in that sense, I think we all tried our best now to make this whole event happen and to join from wherever we are in the world. And I find it kind of amazing that so many people tuned in so spontaneously. Like it was this run was like scheduled like kind of more last minute, I would say. But we all put it together, and I like the attitude that you all brought to the table a lot. And therefore, I just have to thank you very much. And just so for the audience, I will try to make the slide bigger. So here we have it. So we had Birgin, we had Roland, Adi is still here, Abdel is still here, George already left, Sebastian is still here, and Raphael. So people from all around the world working in so many different ways into the cloud field at so many different cloud providers that we have. And I find this kind of amazing. I think we put it together quite nicely, and we've seen that there's something in it for everyone. And I have to thank you once more, and I hope we see each other again soon, maybe at the conference. I think we will do 1 or 2 more meetups. If the audience or somebody who is now listening this video wants to join in a future event, just go to our website and also check out all the services that these providers have to offer and the tools that are coming up on a daily basis. I think there is no provider anymore left that is not doing open source, so everybody's turned into the good side. So thank you all. Any final words from you guys? Folks, sorry, of course.
Stay safe.
And thanks a lot, Benjamin, for putting all of this together and for organizing.
Thank you, Benjamin.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, folks. Bye.
Okay.
Thank you as well.
Thank you, friends.
Okay.
Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So,
Stay safe. Bye-bye.
okay, just for the others that are still in the chat. So we can go into another session called Remote Beers. I think this might be the best for now. Everybody who wants to join can come here. We can have